Namaskar. Namaskar. I just wanted to sort of begin by welcoming again Professor Isaac, and I want you to give him a big hand, please. I don't think he needs to be told that he is a celebrity in this campus, and we are really looking forward to his lecture. So over to you, sir.
Dr. Santosh Mehrotra and dear friends, so we have a problem, and the first step to answer to the problem is recognize that there is a problem. But Government of India is in a very denial mood. If your car sales go down, then they say the millennials are preferring Uber or Ola. Well, if they slow down, they would say the younger generation is taking to public transport, which is good. Now the sales of trucks and vehicles are tanked, they would say, well, they are taking to walking, health conscious. So, not that these are all stupid statements. If you take the data on young people, their purchase pattern, well, as your age comes down, your immediate purchase comes down from around 36 to 25. And also your prospects of buying in the near time also slowly comes down. Younger generation, there is more propensity to take to public transport. Well, that's not denying about it. But they don't explain what's going on. Or about you debunk the numbers. Yeah, I think he seems to say that, well, not Einstein, but Newton did not do the calculations. Struck him when the apple fell on the head. So also, don't bother too much about the numbers. We'll make it to the 5 trillion. So general attitude of Government of India is just to deny that there is a problem. Something they have been doing since 2016-17, the demonetization, which was a disaster. Now I cannot understand how neoliberal exponents could do such a thing, because of course, after all, the essence of monetarism is that you don't play with money. You hold money in a fixed proportion to your GDP, and the economy will adjust itself. But here is somebody, a monetarist, neoliberal, abolishes money itself. It can be nothing but disaster. And that's what has happened. So what you do, they've been fudging the numbers very clear. Because all correlates of GDP, whether it be exports, capital formation, every correlate have been going down, only GDP has been keeping the pace. And Arvind Subramaniam, the former advisor, has elaborated on this in a paper. We may not accept his exact calculation, say regression analysis reaching the rate of growth, but everybody, I think I would go by say Arnagraj, where he argues that it's undoubted that the rate of growth has been much lower. And now it's accepted officially. The last quarter, the growth has been just 5%, down from 8% in the first quarter of 2018. Had been steadily coming down to 5%, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. So now, I'm certain there have been a number of very eminent speakers this evening. I don't want to repeat them. I'm certain they must have dissected what has been happening in India. I'm more of a practitioner, I will confine to that. But everything said and done, it is the one way of getting out of taking hard decision is to say is structural, problem is structural, long run. It's not a question of aggregate demand, you see. That's what the Union Finance Minister said, you see. But everything points to, of course, there are structural problems. Many a structural problem, our interpretation, our position regarding the structural problems that Indian economy faces may be very different from Government of India. But there are structural problems. But within the broad framework of the structure, there is a cyclical downtrend that has occurred, where aggregate demand has come down. You have the consumption demand going down, right from automobiles to biscuits. There is inventory building up and layoff taking place, point to consumption demand going down. And also latest number which came today regarding the industrial growth, the sharpest decline in July has been in the capital goods segment, where when compared to last year's July, it is minus 7.1%, which shows how the investment demand has tanked. And therefore, you have a situation of C and I declining, and it will have a deleterious impact upon Y. It's a simple truism. Y is equal to C plus I. And there is a third component, G, the government expenditure. So if you want to have your income grow or at least remain the same, you have to increase G, because it's accepted today. Nobody can debate that C plus I is going down. So elementary macroeconomics will suggest that you have a fiscal stimulus, you increase your G, government expenditure. That's what they refuse to do. You can think about. And to me, surprisingly, not only Nirmala Sitharaman, but also Dr. Manmohan Singh. Today's recipe 5-point program came out. He has almost forgotten everything he did in 2009-10. Yeah, his prescriptions have been against structural, streamlining, GST, agriculture. All this needs agriculture growth, etc. have to be done. But the simple thing, there is a collapse of aggregate demand, and the only way the economists can respond to it in the short term is by stimulating demand. So, no one, even industry very timidly suggested, Asachon gave a memorandum saying 1 trillion rupees stimulus package, which is nothing, I think, 1 trillion. They have taken 1.76 lakh from the Reserve Bank. So what is 1 trillion? But nevertheless, even at least they suggested, you see, but it was just brushed aside. When 1.76 lakh rupees from the Reserve Bank reserves came, everybody thought there's going to be a stimulus package they're making. But no, they have different ideas. I think they're just going to fill up the gap in the revenue. It just fits the gap. I think when they made the budget, they had calculated how much money they would require from the Reserve Bank and just left that gap and just took that money for the gap. Whatever happens, they don't want the fiscal deficit to rise. That's a part of the story will have to come at the end. So, I think, from my position, my position is that what we require is something like what we did in 2010, a big stimulus package. And what are the components of this package? first and most important is putting money in the hands of people. Now I don't saying doling out to everybody, but double the expenditure on MGNREGs. That's a simple thing. You expand it to the urban sector. You increase the number of days from 100 to 150. And you increase the wages by 50 rupees. And your 70,000 crores rupees will go to 1.4 lakh crores. And that will immediately bring money into the hands of people. Also, now anyway they are concentrating on creation of assets. Assets will be built in the rural areas. Some steering will take place. Some stimulation. At least biscuits they will buy. Though they may not buy the cars, so definitely. Biscuits they will buy. Now second would be, biscuits are taken care of. How do you take care of the cars? Now, the best and simplest would be, why are the cars sales down? Simply drying of the credit. Major part of the credit for car automobile purchase came from not the banks but NBFCs. And IL&FS, for whatever reason, Reserve Bank decided to make an example of them, and therefore didn't come to the aid, and therefore floundering. That is frozen entire non-banking financial institutions from aggressively lending, and they are covering the risk. Therefore, credit for the consumer durables are dried out. Now we have a strange prescription given. Everybody is discussing the channels and everything. I am the only person standing again. That you immediately slash the GST rates for automobiles. First of all, one has to calculate the price elasticity of the automobiles. What will this say small percentage decrease in the 5% decrease in the tax rate will do? First of all, we have to accept that the slowdown in the automobile sector did not come because of high GST rates. Because pre-GST rate, if we include state VAT and central excise, I am not adding service tax. All adds are there are service tax component. And CST, well, it is about an average about 10 percentage point higher than the existing GST. So it is not the GST rate which has created the issues. More than that, if at all I would argue, and that's the position I'm going to take in Goa, if you want to cut, you cut the cess, compensation cess. Don't tamper with the GST. Why do I say that? Now this is only revenue of the states. See, you have a conservative fiscal policy which does not allow, in the time of a great slowdown, the fiscal deficit to rise, not only of the state center but also the states. Then you cut the revenue, all the states will be forced to have a contractionary policy, which will be totally counterproductive. So then the question raised is, suppose you reduce the cess, compensation cess, then how will you compensate the states? I am saying very simple. Let Government of India give a loan to this fund and extend the cess for 2 more, 3 more years till this is recouped. It is supposed to end in 5th year. No, let it go on to 7th year. What does it matter? It is not of any fundamental constitutional principle that is involved. So if you want to reduce the price, well, don't tamper with this, because there is a question of equity involved. Today, Economic Times carries the headline, the 5%, the tax on necessities, to be raised to 8%, so that you mobilize resources lost giving tax concession to automobiles and consumer durables. Now, this is the most iniquitous suggestion you can have. In a country like India, where there is high level of inequality, the consumption pattern of the rich and poor are so different. Majority of the people and the elite. Here is GST itself. Taxes on the consumer durables and elite consumption has been reduced. Now you want to make it one single tax for SUV and say having puppet. It's obscene. That's what I say, this obscene. To even to suggest that single rate. They say it's so complicated, so many rates. Silly. Think of the period, pre-GST period. There were about 18 taxes which were subsumed. Rates of each of these taxes differ from state to state. See the whole complex indirect tax system that existed. It has been simplified into a force structure, same rates. Of course, you have to accept there is something more than ease of doing business in India. See, this does not ease of doing business. There is the question of the equity. That's important. You see, revenue for the states. These are very, very important concerns. So when the issue of ease of doing business becomes paramount about everything else is given by. So they have been suggesting this. Then what is that? Then the question is raised. How do you then get the present problem in the automobile sector? I would say provide credit. If necessary, provide an interest subvention. Anybody who purchases automobiles within the next 6 months gets an interest subvention. They will all front load the purchases. If you look at the data on the purchase pattern or aspirations of the millennials, which has come out yesterday, you will find that as the age comes down, they don't want to purchase immediately, but the proportion of people who want to purchase, say, next 2-3 years, that goes on ballooning. So you provide credit industry, they will all purchase now. They'll take care of your demand problem. See, instead of that, what's the amount of energy being spent upon these tax, how to do that, how to tweak it, how to raise the 5% to 8% and so on going. So I would say consumer durables, provide liberal credit if necessary to entice people to purchase now, reduce the interest rate for them. And third, have a big infrastructure spending. Use this as an opportunity to enhance your infrastructure spending. There are a whole lot of infrastructure halfway finish line. Nitin Gadkari is being pulled up for thinking of too much of roads in India. Well, this is an occasion you can spend. So this is an opportunity, I would say. The crisis. Every crisis provides an opportunity if you are willing to take up the challenge. What is preventing Government of India from considering these options? Each of these options I suggested would result in an increase in the fiscal deficit, something they can't. They'll fund the data totally, window dressing, but they want this optics to be good at 3.3, 3.4. Whom are they trying to show? And that's a big question of today's Indian economy. They are trying to convince the finance capital, international finance capital, we are behaving according to the rules. So that's it, very simple. They are unwilling to move away unless and until perhaps the world recession strikes. CPI radio piece is going to strike soon. Yeah, Europe. So, well, if it strikes, then everybody will go Keynesian. That's in 2009. Trump also will go Keynesian. He can't have a paralysis before the election. So the world will go Keynesian, then they will go. But India government cannot afford to do that. Why? They are sitting on a pile of mountain of foreign exchange reserve, of which they are proud, trumpeting around. But unlike China, this is not from trade surpluses. India never had a trade surplus. Even if you take the invisible earnings of migrant workers and so on, still India is deficit. India's foreign exchange reserve is nothing but the contribution of the portfolio investment that is flowing in India, you see. Now that's a dangerous situation, you see. Particularly when you have made them nervous by taking money from the Reserve Bank. The people now think twice how reliable is the numbers put out and so on. Viral Acharya was quite right about Argentina, warning about Argentina. So the Viral Acharya's ghost is around. And therefore, India government is nervous about it. See, so desperate they are. See, they could have borrowed from Reserve Bank, but then they would appear in your capital account, increase your revenue deficit. Therefore, they take the same money as a profit, and therefore it will come in your current revenue account. But essentially, it's a clandestine monetization of your debt that is taking place. The essence, there is no difference at all. But it is not the essence, the appearance that matters. That 3.3 will not be breached. Anybody with sense, even IMF had put a question, Joydeep had brought it out the next day itself. This discrepancy between the numbers in the revised estimate and the budget figures, and the actual estimate. So they're terribly afraid of that, want to keep up the appearances. And therefore you have a situation where people are unemployed, resources are lying idle. You increase your expenditure, your inflation is not going to shoot up. You have low inflation, you have pretty big food reserves. In fact, you don't want, you think you have too much of it. You have foreign exchange reserve. There is nothing, if you look at the parameters which is saying, be careful, don't increase your deficit. But they are so terribly afraid of this, which shows this is a real danger that the economy is facing. That's because our financial sector, when compared to 2009, is much more weak. At that time, even Chidambaram very proudly said, our nationalized banks, and very patriotically beating the breast. You know, that Chasti was saying that the banks, they withstood international pressure and so on and so forth. But look at the state of our banks now, they are the weakest link in the chain. So really, here is the ruling clique do not know really what to do. This is the policy paralysis that is taking place. I think there is also a method, a system in these terrible statements that are being made out. You know, many things like Einstein finding gravity and so on. It is essentially trivializing all this stuff. Right? Not want a serious discourse on what is happening, because too many such statements are coming out. And these are not people who do not know. They know. They know, yeah. This is elementary stuff. Even Nirmala studied here. All right, let me say. See, therefore they are following a fiscal stance which is really conservative. And the squeeze is on the states. That's what I want to underline. That is already very evident in the review of committee report on the FRBM Act, headed by none other than the present head of the 15th Finance Commission, N.K. Singh. What exactly they're saying? They're saying that fiscal deficit ceiling we brought down from 3 to 2.5. And states and center are equal. States' borrowing power to be reduced to a lower level than the center. Yeah, that's it, not equal anymore. Center would have higher borrowing power. Now it is all both get 3. Now no more. And the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission, they are asking for the first time what conditionalities can be imposed on borrowing by the states. That's it. Say a state like Kerala. We are one of the big spenders. In the sense, all the states in India have huge treasury surplus which is invested in Government of India securities. See, in the treasury, every day revenues come in, and then from the treasury withdraw money and spend. Suppose your withdrawal is less than the revenue which inflows, then you have a surplus. Not permanent, temporary. Then RBI automatically pulls this money out and deposits in the India government security that you earn a small interest. Now this is to be an aberration. Now today, all the states in India put together has 1.4 lakh rupees lying Government of India treasury bills. Why? I have a paper, long paper, but it's not dated in terms of data. Argument I think is strong still. EPW, which say, why do states not spend? They have destiny to be kept with the revenue deficit, you see. Even if you have money with you, you can't spend on current expenditure. Then your revenue deficit will come. Revenue deficit for most Indian states are 0. Very meticulously they keep to that. And therefore, what do they do with the rest of the money? They can spend on capital expenditure, but that is difficult, spending capital. They put in simple thing in the Government of India security. I've asked GST Council, some of these ministers who sit near me, hey, why do you do this? What do you do? I said, build schools. So I said, no, you have to hire teachers, qualified people, this. I said, if it's so difficult, give every agricultural labor every month 1,000 rupees. Why do you want to put it in the Government of India security? But Kerala and earlier also Bengal also, some states are very different. Because we have taken a path, Kerala has taken a path of expenditure with heavy liability on social spending, schools, healthcare, welfare, so on, so forth. So in a population of 3 crore and a quarter, around 52 lakh people getting 1,200 rupees as pension or disability aid and so on and so forth. That's one number which is very, very striking. Like that. And therefore, what happens? Suppose they take the GST to stimulate the economy, cut the rate. Our revenues will fall. How do you finance it? They won't allow you to borrow more. Not only allow you not to borrow more, Kerala's borrowing has been reduced by 6,000 crores this year. In the beginning of the year, they indicate how much you can borrow. So it is 24,000 crores. Halfway through first quarter is over, they said you can borrow only 6,000 rupees, 6,000 crores less. Why? In 2016-17, your public account showed 6,000 rupees extra. Now what is public account? Now that is the hilarious stuff. Because you are facing very serious ways and means, as you don't have money to give, even if you allow people to, departments to take the money. Therefore, you put ways and means restrictions. Okay, you allowed education department, guess 50 crores rupees, but you can take the money out. It's given, accounted as expenditure. Then what do you do this 50 crores? It's kept in the treasury as a deposit of the education department. So we had something like 6,000 crores of various department money which could not be spent because there is no liquid cash in the treasury. So this is added. Your salary revision comes, then you don't have money to give for the arrears, so you put it in the PF, that goes up. And there is a small component of deposits which come, 6,000 crores less. Floods have come. Total loss would be 30,000 crores, 4% of the GDP of Kerala. So we have been saying, permit us to borrow for this outside the borrowing limit. So we were thinking they would do that, but now they are saying we are tired of World Bank, ADB and so on loans. Now they are saying, well, it is within the borrowing limit. So what do you do? See, that's what I said. Not only do they not undertake a fiscal stimulus, the whole strategy is to squeeze the state in various ways. Now, this is counterproductive. See. In a time when we should be all undertaking an expansive stance, here is the state forced to be restricting themselves. So what do? So we have decided to live dangerously and adventurously. Yes, Chandru, that's what you have decided. You can't borrow within the budget. Therefore, every government, even central government, borrows outside the budget. How is Nahai raising their money for the roads? They borrow outside. It's not part of the government expenditure. All the major Navaratna companies and so on, they borrow outside. So that is also true of state governments. Major infrastructure projects, they borrow against the infrastructure future earnings. But these public sector entities at state level may not be efficient enough to operate in the credit market. That's one thing. They don't have the sufficient skills to do that. Secondly, the type of infrastructure that you are thinking of in Kerala is not confined to so-called quote-unquote remunerative, profitable ventures. We want our schools to be world-class, every classroom to be digitalized. We want our hospitals to be upgraded so that they meet the new challenges to health. Even our roads, we can use the traditional toll model, because those of you who have come to Kerala will see it's a ribbon-like growth, on both sides of roads, one end of Kerala to the other end, people have shops, houses, everything. Now, if you want to have a toll model, you need to have, say, access roads on the side, so that toll road, you block the access. You can enter only by paying the toll. But if you want to do it in Kerala, you have to demolish all these houses. and it's just, cannot think of the cost involved. That's why our national highways also is not being developed, because they say it is too costly in Kerala. So finally we have decided we meet our cost of acquisition. Therefore we can't use the traditional methods of each project financing itself. Therefore we created an infrastructure fund, Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board, which will borrow for all infrastructure spending, not for government, para-state. Government treasury, government budget, this money cannot enter. That will be violating the FRBM Act. But they will raise money and then provide for various para-statals that would be implementing, building roads, building schools, building hospitals, transmission lines, building, say, connecting every household in Kerala to internet. Internet next year will become a right of every citizen. We are going to provide it free for BPL families. Others have to pay some money. So all this kind of spending. Now how does this gift be? Why should market lend to them? Particularly the amount involved is 50,000 crores, a huge amount of money for a state like Kerala. Just think, the Assocham wants 1 trillion rupees stimulus. We are having a $500 billion stimulus in Kerala. How do you do that? Very simple model. It's virtually like a sinking fund. The KIFBI would be given 50% of our most buoyant tax, motor vehicles tax, year after year. It's legislated and government has no choice but to go. It's through an escrow account mechanism. The money comes, 50% goes to the state, 50% will go to KIFBI. So now they are assured of a future income flow. They can simply securitize this income flow, future flow, for a current borrowing. This is the simple idea. So simple, it looks so ridiculously simple, but it's being done. It's being done. So I have a stimulus package. Why? In a federal system like India, it's a vast country like India, there can be regional recessions. What do? Kerala's commercial crops prices have crashed. Well, that has been going on for some time now. Now with the new international treaty that is going to come, it will collapse further. But what has affected worse is the return migration from Gulf. Gulf is in a turmoil and labor restrictions have come. So now net inward migration return migration is taking place. Yeah. Those more people are returning than people are going. We are trying to have to go to Australia, New Zealand. Now looking forward to Brexit to get our nurses to England, because the Brexit, all East Europeans already like to go. Maybe we'll get some toehold there. But still, it's going to be calamitous. If a world recession takes place, it will be a calamity. Because what you are talking about is 1/3 of your GST. A sharp fall in it can be socially totally disruptive. So how do a state in this federal system undertake a stimulus, rejuvenate the regional economy, if central government is following a conservative fiscal stance? That's the challenge. Answer is this. We are having its own 50,000 crores stimulus package. It will start spending, money will be pumped into the economy, regional economy from now. Multiplier impact will be less because local laborers come from outside and cement and so on come from outside. So multiplier will be low, but still it will be a big boost to the economy. So I think, what do you do to meet the crisis? We are putting forward a different proposition that you have to invest and you have to spend, and that's a more story I wanted to tell. So thank you very much. I think I'll stop here. Yeah. Now I will take any question.
Dr. Isaac will take questions, so let's